Have you ever wondered, what would your life be like if you acted as if you were completely focused, undistracted by the world around you? No more time, no more knowledge, just walking as if everything was already set up for you to succeed. It's not an illusion, it's a choice, a decision that can change the entire direction of your life. Most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because distractions overwhelm their focus. Every time you check your phone while you're working, every time you procrastinate on an important action because of a temporary emotion, you're losing a piece of the future you could have. But the scariest thing is, you've gotten used to it. And getting used to distraction is one of the most dangerous traps you can fall into. Imagine you're a laser. Lasers don't shine everywhere. It focuses its energy into a single point and cuts through anything that stands in its way. It is the image of someone who knows what they want, who doesn't waver, who doesn't procrastinate, who doesn't sit around waiting for inspiration to strike. They don't need the perfect circumstances to get started. They just need one thing, the decision to act as if they are ready. You don't need perfection to get started. You just start as if you already have focus. Why? Because when you act as if you already have focus, you begin to live in a frequency where focus becomes your nature. And when that happens, the world begins to respond to you in a completely different way. No more procrastination, no more confusion. There is only one path left, forward. This is the beginning. And it begins with a decision to live as if you already have laser focus. Most people think of focus as an emotional state, that one day they wake up feeling inspired, clear-headed, and ready to work like a machine. But the truth is that emotions are not the foundation of focus. Emotions change. One day you may feel energized, the next you may feel tired and unmotivated. If you let your emotions guide you, your focus will be as fragile as a leaf in a storm. Focus does not come from emotions. Focus is a decision. And it must be repeated every day, even when you don't see a reason to continue. Look at the people who changed the world. They weren't inspired. Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb because he was fascinated by resistors one morning. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize transportation because of a whim. These people made a decision, and they stuck with it day after day, without emotional permission. Their focus is not a reaction to circumstances, but a principle of life. They act as if success is pre-programmed, and all their actions are geared toward it. That is why the world eventually follows suit. You can't control how you feel each day, but you can control what you repeat. You can choose to open your eyes each morning and say to yourself, "Today I will do what needs to be done whether I feel like it or not." Focus is not the absence of temptation, it is the presence of discipline. And discipline is the result of repeated choices. The more you choose to act, the more your mind becomes convinced that this is the only way. You don't have to feel focused to start acting. It is the act of acting that generates the feeling of focus. What happens when you act even when you don't feel anything? You send a powerful signal to your mind that you are the one making the decision, not your emotions. And once your brain accepts that as true, you are no longer at the mercy of inspiration. You become the master of your own rhythm. When you focus not because you feel ready, but because you have decided there is no other choice, you become unbreakable. That is where things start to change. Focus is not a gift bestowed on those who are better than you. It is the product of the person who dares to put decisions first, not emotions. When you build the habit of prioritizing decisions over emotions, you create an automatic system within yourself. You don't have to negotiate every day whether to start or not. You just do. And when you do, day after day, your mind leaves no room for distraction. You act as if you have laser focus, and gradually you actually become that person. Focus is a muscle. You don't train it by wishing, you train it by conscious repetition. A decision every day. No negotiating, no conditions, just action. Focus then ceases to be something you pursue. It becomes something you embody. And when you live as if you have laser focus, the world has no choice but to adjust to match that clarity and intensity. There is a state where time disappears, thoughts fade, and everything becomes clear and natural. That is the state of flow. Anyone who has experienced it knows that it feels like being pulled by an invisible force, as if you no longer have to try, but just let yourself flow. But what few people understand is that flow is not something you fall into by accident. It does not come from luck, and you do not have to wait for it. Flow is something you can intentionally create. And to do that, you need to act as if you are already in it. Weak people wait for inspiration to come to them. Strong people act as if inspiration is already there. That is the key difference between someone who consistently produces results and someone who starts and stops. When you act as if you are already in flow, you are sending a signal to your mind. I do not need to wait for the ideal conditions. I am the ideal conditions. And by doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel in the flow, you gradually create a system that makes flow the default. Imagine a writer who doesn't wait for an idea to come to them. They sit down and start typing as if they were in a creative rush. As a result, the brain catches up. Repetition and rhythm lead to flow. Flow is no longer an accidental state. It is a reward for the person who is brave enough to assume it is there and to act from that assumption. Successful people don't work when they feel ready. They work to create readiness. They understand that the state of mind always follows the action. No one jumps into a stream and gets dry. Your body is wet after you jump in, not before. Flow is the same. You don't have flow and then start. You start as if you have flow, and by keeping moving, you invite it. This requires you to let go of an old belief that you need inspiration, energy, or perfect conditions to do deep work. The truth is, most great things are created in the moments when you have no interest, because the people who create them don't depend on emotion, they depend on commitment. The commitment to act as if you are already in flow is the key to getting there. Don't second guess, don't analyze, just begin. Write when your mind is empty, practice when your body is tired, focus when your mind is scattered. Because if you wait for flow, you'll always be on the sidelines. But if you act as if you are already in it, flow will find you. And when it does, you won't just be working. You'll be creating something extraordinary, consistently and unstoppable. The world today doesn't need whips or pressure to control you. All it needs is distraction. The less focused a person is, the more easily led. Because distraction doesn't just take away time, it takes away the ability to make conscious choices. When you don't have clarity about what you're pursuing, anything can pull you off course. And when you don't choose a specific goal, someone else will. Modern distraction is not uncommon. It's become the default state. You check your phone before getting out of bed. You open a short video, and 45 minutes later, you still haven't done what you needed to do. You intend to focus, but every time a notification sounds, you interrupt. This is not a harmless habit. This is controlled behavior. And the most dangerous thing is, you think you're still in control. But you're no longer in control. Your attention is being nibbled away at every second, every minute, until you are no longer able to focus long enough to create anything of value. People who are unable to focus cannot be creative, cannot be deep, and certainly cannot make independent decisions. Because to make decisions, you need time to think. You need quiet inner space to analyze and choose. But if your mind is constantly being pulled by sounds, images, news, you will no longer have that power. You will react instead of be proactive, and that is where dependence begins. If you find yourself constantly being pulled away from what is important, stop and ask, why? Who is benefiting from this distraction? Every minute you leave a task unfinished, you are enriching someone who is selling your attention to advertising. Every time you give up halfway through because of impatience, you are telling your mind, I am not trustworthy. And after 100 times like that, you lose credibility with yourself. To regain control of your life, you have to start by regaining focus. This doesn't come from pure willpower. It comes from redesigning your environment. Turn off notifications, uninstall unnecessary apps, create quiet spaces, set clear limits on when you can't be disturbed, and most importantly, choose something worth doing and do it to the end, because a focused person is free, a distracted person is led. Every action you take is reprogramming your nervous system. If you practice returning to a task after being interrupted, you are building a kind of willpower muscle. If you let yourself drift along with every stimulus, you are destroying your ability to control the future. Don't fall victim to the fragmentation of attention. Break it. Build a fortress for your mind where only the worthy are allowed to enter. Because focus is more than just a skill. In this world, it is the ultimate form of power. One of the biggest reasons people lose focus is not the environment or the technology, it's the beliefs, but not the right beliefs. They're the false beliefs, invisible, but they've been ingrained in the mind for some time now. They don't shout, they whisper, and because they whisper, you don't notice. But every time you sit down to work and your mind starts to waver, those whispers are running in the background. They say things like, I'm not good enough, I'm not sure this will work, I need more time, I'm not ready. That's not the truth, that's a false belief. And false beliefs are a silent enemy that's more dangerous than any distraction. Let's face it, no one is born with self-doubt. Children are not afraid to try, not afraid to fail. They act first and then adjust. But over time, we're taught to be cautious, to think carefully, to wait for the right moment. And in the process, we learn to doubt ourselves. Doubt becomes the default. Every time you start something new, your mind repeats the same old patterns, the same untested failure scenarios. That's how false beliefs are nurtured, by repetition, not by truth. But if false beliefs are formed by repetition, then true focus can be restored by repetition. The point is, you have to consciously choose what you want to repeat in your mind. And to do that, you need to identify the beliefs that are sabotaging you. Start by observing your thoughts. Whenever you lose focus, don't just blame yourself for being weak. Stop and ask yourself, what am I believing right now? Am I believing that I will fail? That I'm not smart enough? That this is too hard? Those thoughts are not truths. They are just commands that you have unwittingly allowed your mind to accept for too long. You need to replace them. Not in empty positive words, but in new, clear, action-driven commands. Write them down. I am able to focus. I am an achiever. I do not wait for feelings. I act because I choose to. Don't read them silently. Say them out loud. Every morning, every night. Repeat them until they become the background noise of your mind, because what you repeat becomes what you believe, and what you believe determines what you do. The more you believe in yourself, the easier it is to focus. Not because you'll suddenly be better, but because you'll no longer have to fight the internal doubt every time you start. Focusing until it becomes second nature is possible, but it requires you to let go of the old residue of negative talk, of unprocessed failures, of self-images from the past. No one else can do it for you. But once you become aware of the power of belief and begin to master it, you will realize that your ability to focus is not inborn or conditioned. It is the inner script you choose to read each day. True focus is not a static state. It is the result of a consciously rebuilt belief system. When you clear out what no longer serves you and repeat what strengthens you, your mind has no reason to stray. Then you are not just focused. You become the very definition of focus. Every action, every choice, every moment of your day is aligned with a single belief. I am a complete person. And when you believe it, you act accordingly, continuously, unwaveringly. Uncompromisingly. That is true focus, and it begins with you daring to kill the false beliefs that have led you astray. If you don't know exactly where you're going, everything can be a distraction. This is the brutal truth that most people ignore. They don't lack motivation, they don't lack ability, they just lack a clear goal. And because they lack clarity, they don't have a strong enough reason to say no to irrelevant things. When you don't have a specific destination, every path seems right. And that's how you start veering off, getting distracted, and ending up where you don't want to be. A vague goal is like a noisy compass. It points you in all directions at once. You say you want success, but what is success? You say you want financial freedom, but how much, for how long, how? Every time you can't answer these questions, you're allowing yourself to live in ambiguity. And ambiguity always leads to procrastination, because the mind doesn't act without clarity. Clarity creates focus. When you write down a goal in full detail, something happens inside you. You start to see every behavior, every choice through the lens of that goal. What works is kept. What doesn't work is discarded. You no longer have to waste energy deciding what to do each day. It becomes simple. Either it gets you closer to your goal, or it pulls you away. And if it pulls you away, you ignore it. Try this simple exercise. Write down a single sentence, a specific, unambiguous goal. It should be measurable, time-bound, and have a clear direction. For example, I build X business to Y clients in Z months. Not, I want to be my own boss. Not, I want to live comfortably. Specific, because specificity is the only thing that forces your mind to focus. It can't be in the gray. It either works or it doesn't. Don't fall into the trap of people who are always busy but never get anywhere. They live in busyness but lack direction. They do many things but get nowhere. The trap of distraction is not because you are too weak, but because your goal is too fuzzy. To have laser-like focus, you must give yourself a single point to aim at. When the destination is clear, the path will separate itself, and your mind, instead of wavering, will start marching relentlessly towards that single point. There comes a moment in every change-maker's journey where you have to make an irreversible decision. Not a temporary decision, not a half-hearted experiment, but an absolute choice. Either you go forward or you disappear into your own indecision. And to do that, you have to burn the bridge. You have to cut off all paths back to your old self. Because as long as there is a way back, you can afford to go back. People tend to keep backups. They start a business, but keep their old job as a safety net. They want to pursue a dream, but still keep their if all else fails, come back plan. It's those B's that are the reason why plan A never materializes, because the human mind only truly goes into survival and creativity mode when it knows there's no way out. When your back is against the wall, you have no choice but to move forward. And that's when you really discover the hidden power that you would never use. Look at anyone who has ever made it big. They didn't go in with a let's see what happens mentality. They bet it all. Not because they were reckless, but because they understood the psychological nature of total commitment. When Henry Ford decided to build the Model T, he stopped all other production lines. When Hernan Cortez arrived in the New World, he burned all the ships so that his soldiers would have no choice but to retreat, and that forced them to fight like there was no tomorrow. When you have nowhere to turn, every step forward carries the power of someone who has nothing to lose and everything to gain. Burning bridges is not just a physical act, it's a psychological ritual. It's a declaration to yourself. I will not go back to my old self. I will not fall back into my old habits. I will not allow myself to be weak again. Every action from now on is no longer judged by comfort, but by rightness. And when you live like this, you begin to walk with a different gravity. No more hesitation. No more bargaining. Only commitment and progress. To burn the escape bridge, you must clearly identify the soft escapes in your life. It's the job you keep just to be safe. It's the relationship you dare not leave because you are afraid of being alone. It's the phone that is always there to distract you when things get tough. Each of those things is a bridge, and each bridge that still exists is a reason for you not to move forward. If you are truly serious about this journey, do what most people don't dare. Burn the bridge. Cut it, eliminate it, remove the way back. And when you stand between the sea of fire behind and the empty space ahead, you will discover that your legs are stronger than you thought, and the future only begins when you have nowhere to turn. Focus is not a gift reserved for a few special people. It is a weapon. And like any weapon, it needs to be trained, refined, and used intentionally. You cannot expect to have focus without discipline. Because discipline is the shell that protects your focus from all the threats from the outside world and the fluctuations within. Without discipline, you can start quickly but fall apart when difficulties arise. With discipline, you become unstoppable. Discipline is not austerity, it is self-respect demonstrated through daily repetition. Discipline is when you do what you have committed to do, even when you no longer feel like it. It is when you act on purpose, not on mood. It is when you do not feel ready to start. You start because it is the right thing to do. When you live like this, focus is no longer something you create. It becomes second nature. Imagine a warrior walking into battle. He doesn't wait until he feels excited to draw his sword. He doesn't check to see if his mood is right. He acts with discipline that he has forged. And that initiative gives him the upper hand. You do the same. Every time you do what you set out to do, even when your mood isn't in your favor, you sharpen your weapon of focus. Every day of persistence is a new layer of steel. Every time you resist temptation, you strike back at the elements that sabotage your focus. You don't need a perfect schedule. You need a simple decision. Don't settle for what weakens you. Set a minimum of rules that you can't break. For example, write down your goals every morning. Spend time doing deep work without devices every day. Check in with yourself every evening. These little things, when repeated often enough, become the backbone of a disciplined life. And from there, you don't have to try to focus. You become a person for whom focus is your essence. Discipline doesn't stiffen you, it frees you. It keeps you from being pulled around by random emotions. It makes you proactive instead of reactive. And when you combine focus with discipline, you don't just work, you fight. And you win not by luck, but by the unwavering steadiness of someone who never lets go of his sword. Focus is not a passing state, not an inspiration that comes and goes. It is an identity, part of who you are, a way you call yourself every day. Just like you don't wake up and wonder if you should be honest today, people with laser focus don't have to decide every day whether they should focus or not. They have chosen it in advance, and they live by that choice, not by negotiation. The problem with most people is that they see focus as a situational choice. When things are urgent, when inspiration is high, they focus. When they are tired, when they are bored, they let it go. They live as if focus is something that happens to them, not something they control. But if you want to step out of the mean spiral, you have to start seeing focus as part of your identity. You don't try to focus, you are focused. This starts with how you talk about yourself. Don't just say, I'm trying to be more focused. Say, I am a person who finishes what I start. Don't say, I get distracted. Say, I do deep work without distraction because that's how I live. Because every statement is a command sent into your belief system. And over time, those commands shape your behavior, shape your habits, shape you. Laser focus doesn't come from waiting for the perfect moment. It comes from redefining who you want to be. When you choose to identify yourself as a focused person, you start behaving in a way that matches that identity. You schedule it. You turn off notifications. You say no to meaningless chatter. It doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. Because you don't do it to try. You do it because it's how you live. You are. You don't have to achieve perfection to deserve that identity. You just have to repeat it long enough, hard enough, consistently enough that your mind has no choice but to believe it to be true. And when you believe that deeply enough, the world begins to reflect back to you the image you have chosen, someone who is not easily swayed, who is not easily distracted, who does not live by the moment, someone who has laser focus. Not on the moment, on the essence. There are times in life when you look around and you see confusion, unclear, uncertain, no map. And in those moments, ordinary people wait. They wait until things become clear. They wait until they feel confident. But those who really go far don't wait. They act when they don't see the path. They move forward with a simple but unshakable belief. I'll know the way when I start walking. Focus doesn't require you to know it all. It requires you to choose a direction and get started. Because in action, you find clarity. In movement, you discover strength. And in persistence, you build the person who makes any plan possible. Nothing is certain. But the only thing that is certain is that if you sit still and wait, you will be left behind. Focus is not something you wait for when the circumstances are perfect. It's how you live, especially when things are unclear, because that's when your actions have real weight. And when you act without seeing the whole path, you send a message to the world and to yourself. I believe in myself enough not to wait for a miracle. I am the one who creates it. Start now, imperfect, uncertain, but absolutely focused.